Okay, so we are pumped for the 4 things that make a successful singer, born out of our last iSing article. I'm sure all of you have read it, including you, Steve. Steve?
Yep. do you want me to just back that up and say what he means is that he doubts maybe people just skip past that one?
Yes.
But yeah, do you know what? In all seriousness, though, mate, it's an interesting one. This one, isn't it? In terms of the article response, because we can see the response to this webinar as well. Hello, Christiana and John and Monica and Judy. The response, we monitor the traction, obviously, and understand that our must-haves. We feel like there's a slight drop in love for this topic because it may not be quite as quick fixy as other things, or it may not deal with a specific. But the point is with this is that we come from the same standing point of this, don't we, mate? Where it's about these 4 must-haves will probably fix most of everything you want to do. So the high note, or the high E and Re Arturo, confidence, belting. These 4 things will all add to that, and that comes down to what we started with, which was actually what is money. It will give you money. That's what Chris is demonstrating. It comes. But it's like, what is success as a singer? That's the first thing we need to define, right? If we're going to have 4 must-haves, it must be leading to something, and it really can mean anything, as I just mentioned. Meaning, success can be, I want more confidence. When I get more confident, I'm going to be more successful. It could mean I'm going to go and audition on West End, Broadway, and get the part. I'm going to have 1 million records being sold around the world. Probably more than that. I'd want more than that if it was me. But but the point is, these 4 things will contribute to everything. That's where we're coming from, and that's why it's a powerful article and should be taken on board. So by the way, just want to add on. I don't feel anything to add on that, Chris. But Chris, I don't call you Chris normally, do I?
No.
Is it weird?
Insert expletive normally in place of my name.
This has also come from this observation that we have on what we want to succeed in the singing industry. These dreams, some of them are massive, some of them aren't so big, but against the things that have to be done to get there, and that void in between. And it's about outlining those global changes or actions that people can take on board into their everyday life that they are not doing at the moment, right? And it's also, I'm going to stop after this, but it's also about, I want to get this clear, it's also about the people that say in the pop world, contemporary world, there's no right or wrong. You can do what you're an artist, you can do what you want. Let's start with singing in tune, and then we'll talk about the other things that we actually need to do in order for people to like what we're doing. And it's and it's missed so much. You know, when Sharon Osbourne sits on that panel, and we don't really care too much for the reality programs like that, but there's a point to this. When Sharon Osbourne sits on that panel looking up at somebody, and she goes, "I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel what you're giving, and there's no emotion in what you were." And we all know that emotion really has to come from caring about the song that you're singing, or at least caring about what you're doing, right? But in addition to that, we also know that if somebody stands on that stage and has intent, meaning confidence, meaning they're not fearful about what they're doing, and then they sustain a high note that creates amazing energy, for the listener and vibrato comes in at the end, then Sharon Osbourne's probably going to like that. So this is where these 4 things, there's so many reasons for this, but these are why these 4 things are fundamental. And do you want to start with the first one, bit of flexibility?
Yes, and you know what, mate, it'd be good if you could list, just because in case anybody hasn't read the article but would like to throw in a question during the webinar, could you list the 4 areas for everyone?
Sure. So we've got
before we talk about
flexibility. Let's call it vowel or spaces. We have time and we have style. Flexibility, vowel, time, weird one, and style. Not particularly in that order, but.
So in terms of flexibility, what we were talking about was flexibility physically and vocally. And so when we talk about flexibility, we are talking about muscles at the end of the day. The great thing about flexibility in terms of being a successful singer is because if one has a flexible instrument and surrounding musculature of that instrument, usually the singer can sing with a little less care than someone else. There's room to maneuver when it comes to going high. So flexibility is required to increase one's range. Flexibility is required when it comes to increasing volume without getting injured. Flexibility is required when having to sing different vowels high up, when other people may only be able to sing one particular vowel when they're at a certain pitch. We all know this. If it isn't that vowel, if it's an E, I'm screwed. If it's an E vowel, I'm screwed. But when someone's flexible, they can maintain certain vowels much easier high up, which requires flexibility of the laryngeal suspension muscles and all that stuff. So what that all boils down to is it means that you can sing with a little less requirement for actual thoughtful applied technique, which is almost the ideal situation. We all need a technique in the beginning and going forward. But if we had to think about every note and every pitch and every vowel, which is often when we're first singing high notes on high songs, we have to really concentrate like that. That's the way it is. But when we get more flexible in the instrument, we don't need to think about every note like that. We only mop up the ones that are a problem. And as our bodies increase in flexibility, that is what happens. Just to give you guys an idea, when it comes to flexibility, I'm talking directly as well about the muscles of the neck. And as a kind of a challenge to you guys, I'd love to see what happens if you were to sing, let's say after this webinar, sing a tricky line of a song that is normally a little bit wobbly. Take a break. And what I would do is spend quite a bit of time, let's say 5 to 7 minutes, massaging your neck down those big muscles here. M's, right? They're huge. If you ran your fingers deep into them for a minute or two, and then stuck your chin in the air and jutted your jaw forward to putting your hand there, which kind of stretches down the neck here. Grab your larynx if you're with us. You can grab your larynx, give it a shake. And you can shake it kind of vigorously. To side. You might feel it click, you might feel a bit weird. It's really good after that to get into the jaw muscles. Relax. And then take your thumbs and get into the in there and get a bit of pressure in there. I wonder if on those high notes, if you're able to produce them after a little bit of self-massage for 5 minutes in the studio. I see it quite frequently when people come in and they're just not getting it, just not getting the high notes, but then they do a little bit of self-massage. It seems to really work. So give it a go. Very high level flexibility from manipulation. But any exercise that's going to encourage you to be able to find your lowest larynx position, your highest larynx position, your lowest note, your highest note, your softest note, and your loudest note is in your voice, that you can take them from one extreme to the other safely and actually be able to reset back to the middle, rather than some people are always on a raised larynx and can't achieve their low notes. Other people are always on their low notes and can't achieve their high notes. They're just all classic lacking in flexibility. So there's a little bit of guidance. So Steve, you're going to take us on to vowel?
Yeah, because it leads on very nicely from that. Because obviously if we are becoming more flexible, then it allows us to create shapes and move around it, move the articulators, move around the tissues a lot more freely. And that really is, it's an obvious, let's be real, it's obvious, because the vowel in vocal training has been around for years. But I think the reason why we included it here is because you could say that there's a slight disregard for it. And again, the disregard versus its the understanding and control of the vowel is a little bit imbalanced, in our opinion. In the years teaching we've seen, you've even heard band people say, I don't need a voice coach. I don't need skills. I just get out there and do it.
That was a girl. It was a girl band.
She hadn't worked on a laryngeal flexibility yet. That's all it is. So, sorry, I got distracted by a question. So the point is that readjusting the mindset towards vowel scales aren't just a weird thing that people do, aren't a weird thing that singers do. Oh, it's that thing, it's the elephant in the room all the time. It's actually a fundamental, it's a must-have. The understanding, awareness, and being able to execute vowels properly will give us everything that we spoke about at the start. It would give us more confidence as a singer. It would give us the ability to sing the notes that are required in pop/musical theatre, well, any style, but we base ourselves around the more contemporary styles right now. So it would give us all of that stuff. And where does that come from? One of the easiest way to do it isn't by just singing songs or ignoring or not doing much on a daily basis. It's okay. Ma 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 ma. How do they feel? How do those variations of the vowels feel on every single pitch? And although we don't want to get, there's a balance, we don't want to get hung up on technique is everything, vowel is everything. What shape should I be producing on this pitch? We feel that that most singers could probably do with incorporating at least a little bit more of that into their daily routine. So we won't bang on about that anymore. That's vowel. Next on, unless you've got anything to add to that, Chris, we're talking style.
Yeah, well, again, it does tie in, because style and, let's say, vowel production, again, they affect each other. If you're able to, in a technical sense, if you're able to keep the same sort of sounding register, let's say, across several vowels that might be quite different in shape, let's say from E to R to A to I or something like that, then you're going to have like the technical stability to keep a tone. And if you've got that, if you can really say, okay, in my style, I'm going to say that this is my tone right here, this is going to be my style. And I've got to make all the adjustments I can through my flexibility and through my understanding of how when vowels change, how that might affect my voice. Then I'm going to have a much better chance of carving out a style that sounds controlled and well polished and really stable. And style, let's say, when we underpin ourselves with flexibility and technique, we are trying all the time really to facilitate style at the end of the day. Style is a blessing. It's basically what sells records. It's what gets gigs. There's no point singing when it comes to success if you don't have a strong enough style. And if you're looking to really succeed in that world, there has to be something about you that's stylistic. So first of all, yeah, the flexibility of your instrument and everything else will allow you to explore style. And people that have trained in technique in the past, especially teachers, they're very afraid of being stylistic because style can seem damaging. It can seem unhealthy, especially belting, like distortion, all kinds of stuff can be deemed unhealthy. So if we have that unhealthy tag when it comes to certain types of singing, and that tag is unnecessary for certain types of singing, then we'll be stuck in technique world, where we'll be just that little bit boring, nothing much to offer, and hence we will just be singing to be safe, and that's no way to be. So exploring style like that, we have to, with the help of coaches, explore the extremes. And when it comes to exploring extremes in singing for style purposes, you really want to be working with a coach who has a really strong background in producing those sounds, I guess, who doesn't neglect, let's say, medical or scientific research, because I find the coaches that are able to do it and also are really, really well educated as well. They can really help you find the right place if you're trying to explore style. But then style comes from listening too and broadening one's horizons. And when it comes to, let's say, emulating other people, it's okay to sound like a parody of another singer for the sake of developing your style. Steve and I both have occasions in the past where we've sounded exactly like another singer that we were listening to at that time, and listening to recordings back then, it was really obvious. But in the all-round development of us as singers, those moments just get layered under more and more and more of that influence, until we become a unique concoction of everyone we ever listened to, with a fairly strong sway towards the people who we really liked, and they'd be the influences that people could maybe spot in our voices. And I think that, to cap it off in terms of style, it's really great if people can associate familiarity to what you sound like. And that could be either a style, like, oh, it sounds really bluesy with a little bit of kind of jazz in there, or it reminds me of like something in between Janis Joplin and Nina Simone. You know what I mean? Like, we love to do that. We love to identify through that way when it comes to new artists. So no one's going to be utterly unique, but we really need to, when we listen to somebody, we need to look into their voice, listen to it, and get a picture of who they are, where they're from, what they listen to, and what they're feeling at that time. And we can't underestimate that, and we can't let the label unhealthy stop us from achieving that goal.
Can you see Kemi's question, Biff? What about if you have more than one style?
What's this? Where is this? Kemi's, what about if you have more than one style? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Maybe just because I'm not quite on the same level right now, but are you saying you can do blues and you can do jazz? Because, yeah, that's fair enough. You might be able to do two different styles really, really well. Fair enough. You would still sound like Kemi singing both of them. So as much as you're singing in slightly different styles, there's still a consistency behind your voice, unless you're able to sound like someone completely different between styles. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about. You might have to clarify that a little bit more for me, Kemi, I think.
Yeah. If you can. What the issue would be, I suppose. That's what we need to find out from Kemi, isn't it? What's the issue? If you've got more than one style, you just know how to use your voice. You elaborated when you said about influences. Okay, great, perfect. Okay, so we've got a few more questions coming in, but we've got about 9 minutes. So the last point was just about time, and it's to sum everything up that we just spoke about, which was the doing aspect of singing and training, and that it's often missed in our world for some reason. And it's not everyone, because some people are really on it. Some people do their workouts every day, and it's not all about workouts. It could be about a couple of hours of songwriting, or performance training, or whatever it may be, whatever the goal is at the time. Just putting the time in. And we heard a good friend of ours, Dave Stroud, said back in the time, he said that creativity exists in chaos, and progress exists in structure. They weren't the exact words that he used, but we see, I mean, and that's where this point has come from again, in that we see in the creative process with artistic people, it's beautiful, but rebalancing the creative chaos with a little bit of daily structure, working out the voice daily is we would say is a fundamental anyway. But then on top of that, anything else that you have to add into your daily routine habits to get you to the goal, and that will bring you the success that you are searching for at that moment in time in your life. And again, this may seem obvious, but addressing it is the thing. Addressing, okay, I want this thing to happen. What steps do I need to take in order to get there? And that would lead me on to Ian's question. Can I please ask a question dealing with nerves? Any tips for controlling, harnessing adrenaline prior to a live performance? You know, and I would say with that, Ian, you know, we have to look at it for what it is. And we're not therapists and we're not psychologists, but we've seen it enough and researched enough on this that we have to look at why is adrenaline being produced by the body? And it's the fight or flight system within the body that's going, wah, you need to get out of here. This is not good. You're in a frightening place. We need to run from this. We need to run from the lion, so to speak. And so there's like a hormonal cascade within the body that starts, which is trying to get you away from the situation. And people will say, nerves is good, blah, blah, blah. And it might be for some people, but the point is, if it changes the way in which you sing negatively, then we may want to look at, as you said here, reducing that. So then how do we get to a point where we are not scared of doing the thing that we're doing that produces the hormones, the adrenaline, the fight or flight response? And we are firm believers of, if we go back to the research from Albert Bandura back in the 70s, where he did a lot of research on fears, phobias, and one of the most famous studies was on snakes, and it was snake in a box in a room, people that are scared of snakes outside of the room looking in, and across the time they made their way into the room. They made their way into the room with a guy holding onto the snake. The week after that, they had it wrapped around their neck and all that. They didn't around their neck, but you get the point, step by step. And then it worked into a system which then they coined guided mastering. I think some guy got hold of it a bit later on in the 90s. And they started this system called guided mastery, which means I'm scared of this thing. I need to deconstruct how I can make my brain less fearful of that situation. And so if we're talking about being on stage, what that means is starting with, when I'm on stage, what am I scared of? And then you can immediately go, I'm scared of the people in the front row looking at me. Well, actually, you wouldn't be scared of the people looking at you in the front row if certain things about what you were doing were in line. For example, if you, let's say you like ice cream and you can eat an ice cream really easily, and you stood on that stage and you ate an ice cream, you wouldn't be fearful of the people in the front row, or you might be, but making a point, you wouldn't be scared of people watching you eat ice cream. So oftentimes we find it's something about the singing process that makes us fearful. And oftentimes we want to ignore it, maybe because it's hard work, maybe because it's just what we're scared of, but dealing with that right at the bottom there. Is it vibrato? Is it inconsistencies in the notes? Is it high notes? Is it a certain melody? Whatever it is, face the demon and then fix it. And then it's, okay, what's next? I'm not usually in this environment on stage. Well, then we have to find ways to deconstruct that. This month, I'm going to sing in front of one person that won't slam me for it. Could be a vocal coach. The next month, we go to a karaoke, which is acceptable to be not up to standard at karaoke. So that's a good way to get a step in. The next week, it's an open mic. The next week, then we're with some other people. Then we join a choir because it gets a thing. You get the point. It's step by step, making our brain more comfortable with the thing we're about to do. And of course, there are deeper psychological aspects to anxiety and all that kind of stuff that we can't deal with. But we feel like if we can, as coaches, set a procedure for singers to go down, that's one thing we can tick off the list before we start getting into therapists and psychologists and that kind of stuff. So that's my take on that. Biff, 2 minutes. Sorry, 2 minutes on going back to flexibility. I still have some imbalance in the register transitions due to poor TA and CT coordination, and I'm aware it can take some time to fix this. But what could help?
Okay. Yeah, Christiana. Without getting too technical. And if we said, let's say it's just down to a flexibility issue, right? One of the things that you could consider is there could be poor coordination between chest voice and head voice because one of them or both of them are either stiff or malfunctioning or whatever it is. They're just not free and easy. In which case, you could extend them both in their extremes, as in if you felt like your chest voice is really heavy, it's really like that, you could spend a lot of time up the top, even singing in falsetto or something light, even down into the low notes. Vice versa, sometimes you might want to take a little bit of strength into the top, and if you want to do that, I would really recommend doing it through a straw to avoid any chance of injury if you're trying to experiment with that. However, if you feel like you've got both parts of your voice explored, then one way to get them both very flexible is to siren again through a straw or through a closed vowel like ooh, from the very bottom to the very top. Ooh! And be sure you're exploring the extremes of both parts of the range in each siren. And repeating that quite a bit. You have to go through that break so many times. One way, just quickly to smooth that out, if just a vowel siren is not working, it might be really helpful to whack a consonant in there, which often really helps to mix registers like that. So, or just that little consonant in there can really help to take away that break. So I'd love to know how you get on with that. Ian, by the looks of it, really loved your explanation there, Steve. So well done. I thoroughly enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone that joined us today. The questions as well. As always, please do keep in touch with iSing Magazine. Such a great resource. So many things going on. Great article from Josh in the last copy as well on New Year's resolutions in singing, getting them going on. So check it out. Please also join us for our next article in iSing. There will be a webinar, but go to thenakedvocalist.com. We have loads and loads of stuff coming up. Brand new blog just went up yesterday. So yeah, get in touch with us. But for now, thanks, Steve. Good to see you, mate.
No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thanks for coming. Appreciate your time.